we've said this on the podcast, and I'm out of an inner city in Massachusetts called Lowell, and we kind of call what you're saying with the love bombing and guys having pretty much trying to set crazy expectations to women, and then they go ahead into another relationship, expect those same things. We kind of call that the drug dealer effect. So I always tell women's like you're used to a certain thing.
We should say alpha widows, another thing that Rollo talks about too. But yeah.
Alpha widows? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Rollo talks about alpha. Rollo talks about, except these other guys aren't really alphas. They're just like really good at like triggering emotion, you know?
Yeah. The reason we say it's the drug dealer effect, because the drug dealer makes a lot of money, has a lot of time, which in real life, those two don't have those. That's not how it goes in real life. You meet a real businessman, he doesn't have time, but he has money. But if he doesn't have money, then he has maybe some more time. So then girls come into a new relationship saying, expecting the same exact thing with a guy that's maybe making legal money, and then they're like, well, this sucks, I'm gonna go back to the drug dealer. So we would say that.
Bro, I'm gonna steal that, Rich. That is so great. I didn't even think about that. So I'm probably, because I grew up in Texas right after like the crack epidemic. I mean, there were so many fucking drug dealers in the neighborhood where I was growing up. I would go to nightclubs or I would go out and be in social events, and I would have like an incredible conversation with a girl, and then she would just leave with the coke dealer. Like I'm a victim of that. Like, especially in my 20s, I was a victim of that. So the drug dealer effect, like if I'm working 40 hours a week to make $200,000 a year or 60 hours a week, I don't have time for you. Yep. But if I have a bunch of time for you, then I don't have a lot of money. But if you're a drug dealer, you have both. That's really great. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Guys get wrecked out here, and at least in the inner city of your Mass, they get wrecked. You get the common day, blue collar, white collar guy. They get wrecked by the drug dealers, because the drug dealers have all day. Like these girls are like, oh, I'm busy. I'm free at a random time because they work some weird part-time job. So they're free on like a 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. And the drug dealer's always ready, always prepared to be in his car, ready to pick her up and do whatever. So that's one thing we talked about here.
He just left some dope behind and then just went and go pick up the girl. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. You know what? One way you could work around that is some sort of online business. So I make my own hours, kind of similar to that. But yeah, that's really, really important. That's really interesting. I'm going to steal that. The drug dealer effect. I like that.
%.
Cool. So Luke, you had something?
Yeah. So Mike, you've been in the Air Force for 10 years before you started MOA up. How would you say your experience as a navigator in the Air Force changed the way that you prep for events, podcasts, and just life in general? Because when you're in the Air Force, everything has to be so like systemized, routines. Can you dive into that?
So yeah, no, it was 7 years, from 2004, 2011. And I run checklists now before my events. And I learned that if anybody who's an aviator knows about checklists, like they're really important. Checklist discipline. Even if you have the checklist memorized, you still need to have the checklist right there on your knee. I have a checklist for every single one of my events on my phone that I go through before every time. And whatever the last thing I forgot, so like for instance, like the MacBook power cable or the tie clip or the tripod, that goes at the top of the checklist. Now, next time we make sure that's the first thing that doesn't get forgotten. So that's one thing. The other thing was alarms. We use alarms. We use stopwatches when we go through fundamentals of navigation or do solo flights in the airplane. We would use stopwatches. And so the idea of putting timers on my phone or setting alarms is another thing that I got from it. And then the other part is just discipline, like getting there early. Whenever we'd fly, it was 4:15. We'd have to be at base ops 4 hours and 15 minutes before we took off. And that's crazy, 4 hours and 15 minutes. But when you realize all the stuff that you have to do with pre-flight and like meals and stuff like that. So now I don't do 4 hours and 15 minutes, but whenever I have an event, when they ask me to be there at 9, I'm always there at 8. And I always work out kinks. There's always something wrong with the lighting. There's always a battery that isn't charged or a lens that isn't clean or something. And then those things are washed out in the first hour. And then usually, like if I'm doing red carpet interviews, I'll try to do a couple red carpet interviews with people who I'm not going to use their interview just as practice runs so that I can get into state. So I know that everything's working well, so I can listen and see the framing of the video. And then from that point, move forward. So that's the kind of stuff like preparedness, being sharp, understanding. Well, there was Donnie Starling, was his major in my unit back in Georgia. And one time he told me after one of my flights, he goes, because I was getting nauseous. I used to get sick sometimes. And he was like, dude, I promise you'll stop getting sick as soon as you increase your general knowledge. He says, the best way to get over nausea is GK, general knowledge. And I remember him saying that. And I did. I got heavy into the books and I always knew where I was going to next. And from that point on, nausea just went away. It was just when you think about it, like for me, I'm 26 years old and this $67 million airplane is my responsibility. Of course I'm going to vomit, right? Of course I feel nervous and stressed. But once I had a ton of knowledge in every system of the airplane when it comes to when it came to the avionics, when it came to the pneumatics, and when it came to the hydraulics. Once I understood everything, I was so comfortable that it just became a way more fun experience. And then all of a sudden, like you said, the nausea just goes away from preparedness.